Hi, this is a short video about climate crisis, and I'm doing this because I think there's many people who are anxious and or depressed, and we need to have hope, but we need to have realistic hope. So the first thing is the IPCC last October said that we can keep the planet to 1.5 degrees, but we need significant action and we need it now. I didn't see anything change from the Canadian government. I don't know if you did. Sure, we got the carbon tax, but that's definitely not enough by itself. But anyways, the good thing is IPCC has said that there is still hope, but we need to act. It's time. Should have started decades ago. We didn't. So, our backs are against the wall. We're kind of being pushed in against the wall a bit, but we can still do something. Previous governments and the current government clearly have been derelict in their duties, because they ignored the science, and they ignored the evidence, and the fact that we need to get started on addressing this effectively. And instead they continue to support, including the current government, they continue to support the very industry that is leading us towards a mass extinction. Thank you, oil and gas. Anyways, history, I think, will probably judge them harshly. So I'd suggest that if you can, review the various platforms by all the parties, including the Green Party. And keep in mind, though, if the platform is not going to keep us to 1.5 degrees, it is a failure. And it doesn't matter whether you partially fail or you completely fail. Partially fail like the Liberal government and their plan, or completely fail like the Conservative plan. In climate change, that doesn't matter how much you fail by. A failure is catastrophic. And I would argue it is not an option. So just keep that in mind when and if you're reviewing platforms. So the goal for the Green Party is very aggressive, but that's because it needs to be, because there's been continued inaction for the last 4 years, and then also for decades before that. But anyways, we want to see a 60% greenhouse gas reduction against 2005 levels by 2030. We want to see zero emissions by 2050. How are we going to do that? Well, for more information, I'm going to just put a link on the YouTube site that will link you to Mission Possible, which is the Green Party's plan that only focuses on climate change. We have plans for everything else, from childcare to pharmacare, but because climate crisis is basically the existential crisis of our time, that is why I'm going to provide that link, and that's why the policy is specifically focuses on that. How will we pay for this? We're increasing corporate tax rates from 15% to 21%. We want to close offshore tax havens, like all the loopholes that exist. If you've read about the Paradise Papers and the Panama Papers, individuals and corporations are avoiding paying taxes legally. But Canada is losing a huge source of revenue by keeping those loopholes open. And you might wonder why those loopholes stay open. But, whether it's blue or red, the government in power usually has friends that are, they have a lot more power and a lot more money than most of us do. So anyways, close the loopholes for the tax havens, increase the corporate tax rate. There will also be a wealth tax for the people who are incredibly wealthy. And then, of course, we'll stop the oil and gas subsidies, stop funding fracking, liquefied natural gas, because that has the same carbon footprint as coal. And of course, we will not be building the pipeline. Why am I the best person to be your MP, especially for this issue? Well, as a family physician, I see this, and I think more Canadians are starting to see this. Climate crisis is a public health crisis. It will affect, and pardon me, it is already affecting everybody, right? We can talk about tornadoes and flooding and fires, which are awful, and they will, natural disasters are only increasing. But the other thing too is that, well, from a respiratory disease perspective, or respiratory death perspective, there was about over 7,000 deaths in Canada, Canadians who died of respiratory issues related directly to greenhouse gas activity last year. So that's I would suggest that's indicative of a public health crisis. The other thing too is, most of us, a vast majority of us, eat food, right? And produce went up by 17% between last year and this year. The other thing too is I'm ex-military. I did over 23 years in the regular force, the Canadian Armed Forces. I was a healthcare administration officer and then a family physician. So I've got a very broad skill set. I've got an excellent work ethic, and I'm also an ethical individual. So I am the best person to be your MP because of my wide breadth of experience. I don't have any friends in the oil and gas industries or any other industries. I just want Canadians to be healthy. I want them to be well, and I don't want them to be worried about finances. And the Green Plan hits all three of those pieces that are important to me. Thank you for listening. Have a great afternoon.